Good morning, venerables. Good morning, friends. The weather is changing, right? It's getting cooler and cooler. Today my talk will be continue. This is the second talk in this year, and the master assigned it a topic. So this year's topic is the linkage between Theravada Buddhism with the Mahayana Buddhism. Many times we would think that they're different. They are a separate sect of Buddhism, but actually it's not. Mahayana is not a separate sect of Buddhism. It's looking at the Buddha's teaching or discourse from a different angle, from a different technique of practice, from a different viewpoint of how to get to the final goal. It's just like when we come to MABA, we can go through Highway 64 if you're from the east side, and then go on 94, right? Or we can go from Highway 44 through Highway 100 through Washington to come here. Or if you're luxury enough, then you can hire a helicopter and just airdrop. So there are many ways to get to the same goal. The goal is not become a statue. The goal is to get out of misery and become awakened, enlightened, without being trapped into this cycle of rebirth. That's the goal. So Mahayana or Theravada, they are only words, but they do represent a person's willingness, or what we call in the Buddhist term, vows. If we make a vow, that means I set a goal to come on this path to the final goal. Theravada Buddhism, commonly or generally, we refer it to more early teaching of the Buddha. And this is commonly, generally agreed within the community. Mahayana, their goal is a little bit different. It's just like, I got out of trouble. Then I look back and I look around and see that people are still struggling. Now, do I want to go back and say that, hey, I've been there. I walked the path. Now, here is the raft, the boat that we can all ride through this troubled water to the other shore of liberation. Of course, the practice is a little bit different, but the core teaching, the main point, the center of the teaching of the Buddha didn't change a bit. It's the different technique, different goal to get there. So instead of calling it linkage between Theravada and Mahayana, I kind of, rephrase it a little bit. The linkage from the earlier school of teaching to the current or more quite trendy teaching of the Buddha. So last time, our audience a little bit different. We have students from the college. So I'm a little bit skeptical of putting all these terminologies, to scare young people. Not that you're not young, you're still very young compared to me, okay? So if you have not heard about the terms, don't even worry a cinch, because all these terminologies are words for us to understand. If you hear the terms that you don't understand or it's so foreign to me, trust me, coming from a different country, coming from a different culture, coming from a different set of language. When I first came to the United States, I just opened my eyes and opened my mouth and opened my ear. That's it. And then hopefully put that little bitty seed into our consciousness. Eventually, one of these days, it will sprout and flourish as beautiful flowers. So, getting a little bit serious, this is the Buddha's teaching. We can categorize into 3 baskets, or what we call the Tripitaka. First of all, as the discourses, we call it the sutta. Sutta meaning that, all the teachings of the Buddha, put it in one basket, okay, or compiled it into one kind of canon. Now, today, we generally, because, things are developing very frequently and fast. So commonly, we have like 3 canons nowadays. We have the Pali canon, we have the Chinese canon, we have the Tibetan canon, meaning that the teachings are put together in certain language, gathered together. So teaching of the Buddha, it's called the sutta. This is the Pali language. And then there are a set of moral discipline. At the Buddha's time, he set up for disciples to follow. In a way, it's kind of a restriction, but it is not a restriction. It's a kind of protection. I won't get into that. So, sutta vijnana is the principle or the moral discipline. And then when the Buddha gave discourses, sometimes, whether practitioner within the Buddhist community or outside the Buddhist community, they don't understand. So we have this commentary called the Abhidhamma to explain what the Buddha taught. So 3 baskets. You can take one home, choose one, whatever you like to, okay? If you are into the sutta, that means, we study very hard what the Buddha taught. In essence, then we practice accordingly. It's not just reading the book, not just understanding, but we have to think about it. And then we have to practice it so that we can experience it ourselves. So there are 4 steps. First of all, we have to find a teacher, find a center, so that we can listen to the Dharma, listen to the teaching of the Buddha. Then we have to go home and do our homework, meaning that we have to think about it. Is this what I want? Is this going to help me? Is this the right thing that I'm going to practice? So investigate, consideration, ponder on it, whether you're walking, eating, sleeping, whatever, okay? So after that, then we practice accordingly. If the Buddha said that don't kill, then you try to avoid taking lives, including tiny little insects. Okay, then we'll actually feel much better without taking lives. So that is not only protecting others, but also protecting us. Agree? Good. So the next one, this chart is trying to explain the differences between the sutra or sutta, vijnana, and the commentary. The differences is that, first of all, the sutta is actually the teaching of the Buddha. Okay, the vijnana is the rules that set up by the Buddha for disciples to follow. And then, like I just mentioned, Abhidhamma or commentary or sastra, sometimes called, it's an explanation, investigation, analyzation of what the Buddha taught, so that we can understand it more clearly. So the sutra and the commentary. The sutra or the sutta comes first before the commentary. Of course, you know, the teacher has to teach before we can make a comment on it, right? And then the sutta are actually discourses of the Buddha. It answers according to the need of the practitioner. For example, if this cat is a very greedy person, easy to get angry, then when the Buddha saw me and said, no, you can't do that. It's not going to get you anywhere, or it's not going to resolve your problem. So here is the antidotes that you can practice. You can learn and practice so that you can get out of trouble. So pinpointing on each individual according to their need. The commentary are arranging, selection, connecting, using different techniques like similes, like examples. One of them is very good. It's the Buddha's past life. Causality. So it's an explanation, comment, and arranging the Buddha's teaching. So those are the difference between sutta and commentary. Now, the Vijnana is a different thing. It's some rules. So the Theravada tradition and the Mahayana tradition, actually, there is not much of a difference. It's just that based on which book or text they follow, and they have different rules. So the Buddha, after enlightened, he began the teaching alongside the Ganges River for 45 years. Then after he passed away, the teaching kind of traveled into two directions. One, traveling north into Central Asia, all the way down to China. The other one traveled south to Sri Lanka, then to the Southeast Asia. So it is a common saying or general saying that whatever travel north, we call it the Mahayana Buddhism, which is not totally correct. And then travel south, we call it the Theravada Buddhism, which is not totally correct. So we'll find out why. Just, give us a little sense of how those teachings travel. Now, we see, different colors. It's not necessary the Theravada Buddhism didn't travel north. It is not necessary Mahayana Buddhism didn't travel south. So it's the major focus that makes a little bit difference. This is a development of early Buddhist school and lineage. This is by Edward Combs from a book called Buddhism, Its Essence and Development. So after the Buddha entered the Nirvana, meaning that he passed away, then there is a first assembly called by Mahakassapa with 500 arahants, enlightened disciples. And they gathered together with Mahananda, chanted the discourses of the sutra, Upali, chanted the Vijnana, the moral discipline, and it was said that Anuruddha chanted the Abhidhamma, but there are controversial on that, chanting or reciting the Abhidhamma. So it was okay until 100 years later. Then the Sangha community split, the famous schism of the Sangha community. So at the time of the first assembly, 500 arahant was led by Mahakassapa. At the time, they call it the elders because they are actually followers, disciples of the Buddha himself. But there are, remember, Buddha traveled up and down the Ganges River for 45 years. Not his discourse, it's not only geared for that 500 arahants, but for anybody at that time needs the teaching. So there is a young group came up after 100 years of the Buddha passed away and say that, hey, 100 years, we didn't call for the assembly. We were left out. And here, the Buddha taught me this, the Buddha taught me that. So why can the teaching of the Buddha that we heard being collected as the sutta? So the schism began and they split. And they split into two groups. One, we call it the younger and major or more people group, the Mahasanghikas. The other one is called the Saviras, the elder group. So the Theravada Buddhism, when we look at the red line on the chart, it's going all the way down to here. It's called the Theravadins. Oh, going back. the Theravadins here. Okay, now the blue line, this chart didn't show because it's based on the development of early Buddhist school. That is why at the beginning I said instead of Theravada and Mahayana, I would rephrase it as the early school of teaching and the more current or later teaching of the Buddha. So here is a more complicated chart. So the Stavivadas, which are the elders, and the Mahasanghikas, which are the major group or younger, so they each come down, all the lineage down from here to here. And this one is a very important one. We call the Sarvastivadins. A lot of the theories, a lot of the teachings actually based on their analyze called the Abhidhamma Kosa. Actually, Kosa comes later. It's from Vasubandhu. So don't worry about those. Now, I think this is confused enough. Okay, let me make it more confusing. So, just a brief, introduction of the Buddha's council. So 3 months after the Buddha entered Parinibbana, then, we have the first one that 100 years later, the schism started 100 years later, then came Asoka. So that's the one when the Theravada Buddhism actually begin to sprout. That is when Buddhism or the teaching of the Buddha came from India all the way down to Sri Lanka, where the Pali Canon preserved in its completed set. Okay, so those are the important thing. Then, the Sri Lanka, and then all down to Burma, Rangoon. Okay. Now, the following diagram, I don't think I can finish today, but just a little bit of introduction, because I really want to go into detail of those 4 diagrams or the 4 charts. These 4 charts are from a book called The Essence of Agama by Professor Yang. Okay, so it has a timeline that recording the procedure of the Nikaya, which are the discourses. Remember the 3 baskets? The first one is the Sutta. So this is the recording of the procedure of the Sutta. We give it a name called the Nikaya. Then it recorded the development of all the 3 baskets. And it's in Chinese language. So I just kind of, translate it. Hopefully it helps us. Now, the discourse, we see that there are, I should have made this, a red line, but it just slipped my mind. So the green line is the Vijnana Tripitaka. That means the moral discipline passed down by the Buddha. Okay. The blue line, what we call the mantra. Anybody know what is a mantra? Good, good. What is a mantra? Don't know how to explain. Okay. Okay. I'll just give an example. In the Heart Sutra at the end, it says Gade, Gade, Bara, Sang Gade. Those are mantras. it's not a song. It's not just a sound. It has meanings to it. Okay, so it's a, it developed actually very early in the Buddha's teaching. So it started first assembly. Mahayana recited all the suttas. So it is in either a verse form or in a journal form. So if it is in a discourse form, whether it's long or short, it's collected in a collection or organization called the Samyutta Nikaya, the connected discourse of the Buddha. If it's in a verse form, it is collected in a lengthy, more a verse form is collected in a long discourse. If it's in a journal that is collected in the medium size of Majjhima Nikaya. So the journal form also divided into two. If it's by the disciples, collected in the Majjhima Nikaya. If it's by the Buddha himself, called Antarakaya. Okay, so all of these come down to the fragment of the Sutta Pitaka Assembly. That is when the first year when the past being that. So first diagram, first chart, finished, done. Any question? Good job, guys. May all be happy. May all be happy. May all be peace. May all be. Thank you very much.